Hey y'all, it's Allie and Oso, and we're here today to give you another pro training tip to help take your training to the next level. In these videos, I use a clicker when I'm working with Oso. And so today I wanted to talk about why I do that and also why you should train with a marker in general. A marker is just something that says the exact moment you experience this, you're doing something I like and you're going to get a treat. Essentially, it marks the moment you get the behavior you want, and it helps bridge the gap of time in between the behavior and the treat, so your dog knows that it's for that behavior versus any other behaviors that follow that the treat is for. So let's demo this just for a moment with hand targeting. The behavior I'm looking for is for Oso to touch his nose to my hand when I ask him touch. Oso, touch. As soon as that nose touches, he gets a click, and then it takes me a couple seconds to get the treat. Good job, buddy. Touch. Good job. So I'm marking the nose touching behavior for him. Now, I think that everybody should use some sort of marker in their training. It doesn't have to be a clicker. We'll talk about that in a second. But training with a marker is going to be more effective for you. And anything that's more effective is going to be quicker, and your dog is going to essentially just learn it better and faster. It's more effective because you're making it crystal clear what you want from your animal. You're making that communication really effective. And when we're able to communicate effectively, we can train more effectively. Now, I usually use a clicker when I'm training Oso. He also knows a verbal marker. We'll talk about that in a second. But really, you can use whatever marker you want as long as it meets the following criteria. It has to be really short. Good boy is really good for praise. We liked that. But it's not an effective marker because he could do 3 or 4 behaviors in the time it takes you to say that. And so he's not going to know exactly which behavior is getting him the treat. It also needs to be unique. He rarely hears a sound like that except when we're actually training. So if you use a verbal marker, I recommend using a word that either you don't use in your everyday language. Some people will even use something in a foreign language to mitigate that. I also recommend using a different intonation than you normally would. So Oso knows the verbal marker, yes! Good boy. And you can see the ears went forward, the tail started wagging, his head came up. He knows what that means, and he had this actual reaction to it. Yes! Good. Because he knows he's going to get a treat for just sitting here being cute. So with that, I don't really use the full word yes a lot. I use yep or yeah or something like that. But I also put it in a tone that I don't really ever use. I never say a high-pitched yes otherwise. And you can tell that he doesn't have the same reaction when I just say yes without the intonation that's high-pitched. So that's a way that you can mitigate that as well. And it should be consistent. Like I said, he has a different response to yes. The ears go up, the tail starts wagging, his head goes up and a little bit forward versus yes or yes. We're interested that I'm talking to him, but we don't have that same really visual response there. So make sure that it's unique, especially when you're talking about verbal markers, because that's really easy to not be consistent with that. Now, I prefer to use a clicker for a few different reasons. One is that I'm usually training dogs as I'm talking to people, and it's really hard to do that with a verbal marker because I'd be interrupting myself constantly in order to train the dog. So that's one of the reasons that I personally like to use it. The other reason is that it meets those 3 criteria really easily, and I don't have to think about it at all. A click always sounds the same way, whereas I actually have to think about using his verbal marker a little bit more. The last reason that I prefer a clicker is more of a sciencey reason, but the click actually takes a different pathway in the brain versus a verbal marker, and the pathway that it takes makes it more effective and makes him learn things quicker. So I prefer a clicker for that reason as well, is that it actually gets you a little bit stronger results faster, which is important to usually everyone. There are a lot of different markers out there, and whatever you use is really whatever you're most comfortable with. You can use a clicker, you could use a verbal marker. For a deaf animal, I usually do a thumbs up or even like a opening my hand. For a blind and deaf animal, I'll usually do something tactile, like touching their left shoulder 2 times or something like that. But you can get really creative. For marine mammal trainers use whistles. That's why you see the dolphins jumping and you hear a whistle at the usually top of the jump. For fish, you can use a flashlight. You can get really creative with your marker. Just has to meet those criteria. Today we're going to teach Oso a new marker, and I'm just going to do the thumbs up. I've wanted to teach him a visual marker for a while, mostly just for fun, and this is a perfect opportunity to do that. The nice thing about markers is that it's really easy to train them. All you have to do is associate the mark with a trait. So I'm going to thumbs up and trait. That was a little bit slower. Thumbs up and trait. Thumbs up and trait. And this is truly all it takes to teach a marker, is just do the marker and give a treat right after. All right, so we've been practicing this, associating thumbs up and treat maybe a dozen times or so, and I'm starting to see some recognition from him that we know what that marker means. It's probably hard to see on the video, but our ears are going forward ever so slightly when he sees that hand signal that lets me know he's starting to get that he's going to get a treat afterwards. So I'm going to switch over into using this as an actual marker with a behavior that he knows really well. And I'm going to do hand targeting for him, which we practiced earlier. This one can be a little bit harder since I need both hands for this. So this is something that you definitely want to have your treats in like a treat pouch or on a shelf or something like that. Touch. So instead of using the click or the yes that we have, I'm using the new marker. Touch. Touch. Good boy. Touch. So it definitely does not take long to teach this at all. You can start using it pretty quickly. Touch. I do recommend for new markers to start associating them with behaviors that they know really well versus starting them on a brand new behavior with a brand new marker at the same time. That can be more difficult. Touch. Good job. Touch. Good. Touch. Good. Touch. Good job, buddy. Good job. And that's really how easy it is to teach a marker. Just associate mark with treat, and then you can start using it in your training. There are some rules associated with using a marker to make it the most effective possible. The first one kind of has to do with timing. The mark should happen during the behavior, not before, not after. The moment the behavior occurs, you should be marking it. That really just comes down to practice. If your timing's a little bit off, It's not the absolute end of the world, but it's going to take longer to teach your animal what it is you actually want them to do, and you may get some weird behaviors in there where your dog always turns his head to the right when he sits or something like that. So make sure that your timing is really good. If that means practicing without your dog, that means practicing without your dog first. That's totally fine. You can mark behaviors that you see on TV or just people walking past you on the street. That's totally okay. You do have to treat every single time you mark, or it's not going to be as effective as possible. Even if you mismark, you still have to treat every single time. And there has actually been a little bit of research on that, confirming that rule. You should also only use your marker once. Remember, it has to be consistent. A lot of times when people get really excited, their dog maybe had a breakthrough or something, I see something like, good job. And that's not an effective use of a marker. It's not consistent. The number of clicks means absolutely nothing to your dog. If you want to express how excited you are about something, you should click and then give a bunch of treats to your animal, like a jackpot. That's going to tell your animal they're doing something really awesome more effectively than clicking a bunch of times or saying yes a bunch of times or something like that. The other issue that I see when people are new to marker training is they'll try to use it as like an interrupter. But remember that we're teaching the marker equals a treat, and so if you're using it as an interrupter, you can actually teach your animal behaviors that you don't want instead. So if Oso was barking at something, instead of clicking it, which would teach him to continue barking at things, I would probably, clap my hands and call him away in some other fashion. And then once he's quiet and he turns to me, that's when I click, because that's the behavior I want. So make sure you're only marking behaviors you like, not trying to interrupt behaviors you don't like with your marker. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you again next time.